Welcome back to another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm your host, Steven Roy Goodman. I'm here at the University of Cape Town, where we'll be talking about music education. Camillo Lombard is a jazz pianist and co-founder of the Cape Music Institute. Mary Anne Constable is a singer-songwriter who recently released an album called Where Oceans Meet the Sky. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on again. Camillo, maybe if we could start with you. What is the Cape Music Institute, and what does it do exactly here in town?
Well, the Cape Music Institute, Steve, is a learning institution for aspiring musicians and artists and songwriters and sound engineers who cannot afford to study at our universities like the University of Cape Town and Stellenbosch University. But we look at targeting our previously or historically disadvantaged kids to come and learn skills and also get qualifications for learning skills.
And how old are these kids?
They are all post-matriculants, so they enter after grade 12. And we also accept dropout kids who dropped out of school because of our education system. We don't cater for a focused learning per se. So we look at also adding numeracy and literacy skills to their program.
That's interesting. So in terms of a student would do this after they've graduated high school or after they have not gone to university?
After high school or after they have not gone to university, yes, definitely. And so we're looking at age, 17 or 18 plus.
And what are some of the instruments that are the big instruments that people want to learn?
Well, it's all contemporary music instruments. It's vocals, keyboard, guitar, bass guitar, drums, and sound engineering.
Fair enough. And Mary Anne, you are a singer-songwriter. Did you ever go to a school like this?
I didn't actually. A lot of what I know about playing guitar, I either a little bit of self-taught, but I did go for some guitar lessons for a little while. It wasn't specifically a school, it was through a friend of mine who is a guitar teacher. And then in terms of songwriting, it's mainly self-taught.
Well, that's exactly the issue of self-taught. That's actually where I wanted to go today, if we could chat about that a little bit. A number of universities have these big music schools, like the University of Cape Town and other universities around the world, but not everybody can always afford that. So what are some specific steps that people can do at either the Cape Music Institute or elsewhere to really bring yourself up to the level where you could create an album, or you could learn to be a great drummer, or you could be a great guitarist?
I think, Steve, if I can answer that question and take it from my own life, I did not have the opportunity to study at a tertiary institution, but I had the gift of music. And I'd really apply myself and listen to different artists and try and copy what they are doing, and then practice, because as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. And I found myself, when I left school at the age of 18, joined my first professional band at the age of 19. It became a learning institution for me. I learned from experience, and then automatically you start learning the business side of music as well, because you're doing business through music. And so I've had to learn by performing with different, legends within South Africa and the Western Cape area. And that really, to me, was my kind of university.
Well, that's interesting. So you mentioned the business of education. Maybe I could ask both of you this. So what is the business of music education?
I would say I know a lot of musicians who also have been self-taught, but they followed their hearts. And in order to answer the same question you asked Camillo, I would have said, is to follow your passion and to follow your heart. So business, not in the sense of actually business in itself, but just following your heart and learning from people. And I think especially in the global world that we live in today, there's so many opportunities to learn online and tutorials, things like that. And I think also going to watch a lot of live music for me has been an education in itself, learning from those who are really good and those who are not so good as well. You learn what not to do.
If I can add on to what Mary Anne just said, is that a lot of people are under the misconception that music is only about performance or performing on a stage, or playing your instrument, and there's multiple earning streams within the music industry. Mary Anne being a songwriter, you can earn royalties from your songs performing on radio or other mechanical media, or digital media, and even performing on stage. If you perform your own original song, there are societies or collection societies that collect blanket license fees from venues and in turn distribute them to their songwriters or composers.
So let's assume I go to a restaurant and I hear some music through the loudspeakers in the restaurant. How does that work?
If the restaurant is a vendor or a licensed vendor, you know, because you need licenses to sell anything at a restaurant, liquor, food, you know, as well as music. So in South Africa, we have the Southern African Music Rights Organization who takes care of that. And that restaurant owner or manager would then need to pay a blanket license for all the music that gets played through the year to the collection society, namely SAMRO in our case. And if you hear Mary Anne's song playing in a restaurant, maybe in Cape Town, you know that she's definitely going to receive royalties for a song playing in that restaurant.
But how does she know that it played yesterday at 6 o'clock?
Well, we've got something called a live return form that the manager fills in, and you know, he fills in the name of the song, name of composer, and sends it off to SAMRO.
And now you have a new album. Has your album been played throughout South Africa, or it's too new, or you're just starting with it?
I would say it's new, and I'm in the process. I have registered with SAMRO, and there's a couple of other ones, one called SAMPRA and Capasso, that's it. So for me, that was very much a learning curve as well, because as I say, like following my passion and then suddenly realizing there's this whole business side and how does that work. But last week, I actually followed it up and I got my number for SAMRO that I'm registered with them. So it's all very exciting. But I think it will definitely take some time before I get there. I want to submit a couple of songs, or probably start with one song to the radio. There are also some local radio stations which play more local music, and hopefully I could get played on there and get some airtime. For me, it's not really about that, making the royalties, but it is definitely something that should be done to support musicians. I think there's a lot of places or a lot of ways that venues try to take advantage of musicians by not paying them, or and there are instances where that's appropriate, but I do think musician, it's your profession, it's your creative intellectual property, it deserves to be rewarded.
And speaking of the rewards, so this was your first album that you just did.
Yes.
So can you walk us through a little bit, if you don't mind, how you came about the idea or the ideas for this, and then how you created this?
Mine is a very unique story, and what I want everyone to learn from that is that their story will always be unique as well. Traditionally, people would get signed up by one of these big record companies, and then you would record your album through them, and they would obviously pay for everything because it is quite an expensive affair. But the instance is that people think that musicians earn a lot of money, but they only get a small percentage of that from a record company. In the global world we have today, there's a lot more opportunities, and people can record music independently. And also knowing that there's a lot of competition around, I hadn't had that record company approach me and offer to sign me up. So I decided that I could take it into my own hands and publish my album independently, but I had to figure out a way to do that. And the main obstacle for me was financials, because you can get a microphone at home and a little system, but you've also got to realize, firstly, a producer who is like a director of an album, they are going to help you create this piece of artwork. And also, you really need, if you want to do something good quality, you've got to invest in it. And so that's something I wanted to do. I knew it was not going to be cheap, but also being a determined kind of person, I wanted to find a way to do it. And the concept of crowdfunding, which I know is quite popular in the US, but still fairly new thing in South Africa, I discovered that a couple of years ago, and I realized this is what I need to do. So I got to a point where I'd met someone who could produce the album for me, and he was okay with the idea of me doing the crowdfunding and paying him after the fact. And then I did my crowdfunding through a South African site called Thunderfund, and it was very hard work, and it's something to do again. I don't know if I would easily make that decision. I just worked hard on doing little concerts and posting things online. Social media is something so helpful to get your music out there and get people involved. And had a lot of support and was able to raise 30,000 Rand. The costs were a bit more than that, but that obviously covered a huge portion, and my producer is very happy to be paid because we've been working on the album for about a year. But it was really a life, like one of those bucket list items for me, or a life project, a dream.
Well, I'm glad that it did happen. In terms of the quality, though, how do we know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how do we know that the music was good or is good? What mechanism is there to determine whether or not that music is good? Do we determine it based on the number of people who purchased the album? Do we measure it by the amount of minutes on the local radio station?
Yeah.
And maybe I could throw that to both of you. How do we know when the music is good?
Radio stations normally determine quality control. You know, when you take your album to them and to the playlisting guys and say, guys, we've got a new album, or there's a new single that we released. They would have a listen, and then you give us some feedback and say, listen, there's something wrong with the mastering, or, you know, we can't play the song. Or, great mix, great master, great song, we're going to playlist the song. So I think, you know, one could bounce it off the radio guys.
I think in terms of the mechanics of good production, there are certain things you can judge. If you've got a good producer, you'll work on a song before. Like, there were a couple of my songs which we changed a little bit. We maybe cut out one of the verses and just improved the song so it could pack a bit more punch. And then things like mastering. And for me, learning the process of mixing and then mastering, and how important mastering is, which is kind of the polishing of the track. And so somebody who understands music well will definitely hear that. So that's one part of the quality. And then in terms of creativity, it's a difficult thing to say because it's obviously due to personal taste. And there are different kinds of music, and I've got an indie folk kind of style, but then you maybe have hip-hop and R&B, and different people will prefer different things. One thing that I do find is that there is a style that is the popular style that you'll hear on the radio stations, and then there's the more underground kind of music which you'll hear when you go and listen to live music around Cape Town. And I would say my music is more of the underground type, but that doesn't make it any less good.
Well, that's interesting. Let's get, if we could, to students learning to do that. So let's assume a student comes to your institute. How would they learn the stuff that Mary Anne was just talking about if they've never done an album before, and maybe they're a relatively new musician?
We get industry professionals to engage with them, you know, and come and teach them the skill, and the, you know, sometimes we get some radio playlisting guys to come and, you know, speak to them about what the public is looking for, what they playlist at the station, what kind of genres they're looking for, and it should be radio friendly. You know, this is what radio friendly sounds like. And, you know, just to give them some insight, you know, as to what the general public demands out there. And so I think these students of ours, you know, coming from a secondary institution into tertiary space and becoming a feeder into our bigger industry, get a better insight as to, you know, what is expected and what kind of ink they should have in their pen when they write the song. As Mary Anne rightfully said, so, you know, the lyrical content and, you know, what are you targeting, who are you targeting, and also to be true to who you are as an artist, you know, is I think one of the main points. Be true to your identity, be true to your culture, be true, you know, tell your own story. And I think when you tell your own story, you know, people start relating to who you are as an artist. And, you know, don't try and copy what somebody has already done before, because, you know, we don't need another copy of someone else. There are many factors that contributes to, you know, giving them the proper insight as to what is needed out there. If they want to stay an underground artist, that's their choice. If they want to go commercial, it's also a choice. So ultimately, we throw the ball in their court and they start writing. At the Cape Music Institute, we have writing projects every Monday afternoon. They get into an ensemble class, and we'd say to them, this week the genre is going to be alternative rock. Now, Cape Town kids are not that exposed to rock, so they've got a lot of researching to do, and we did that project, and some amazing songs with amazing lyrical content came out of that week's songwriting project. And every Friday afternoon they present their songs on stage, and they've got to speak about the genre, about research that they've done before they perform the song, and they've got to dress accordingly and perform accordingly, which gives them, insight into the genre. And so we do that on a weekly basis, and then we go through different genres, R&B, Cape Town genres such as the Guma, which is indigenous to Cape Town, different kinds of music. So we really expose them to what people want out there, so that they get the right palette for what the listener is looking for.
Well, that's interesting, because I went to a concert the other day, a jazz concert, and I was surprised how many people showed up to this concert.
Yeah. People love jazz. Cape Town is, I think, the jazz capital of Africa, per se. We've got the Cape Town International Jazz Festival that happens every April, and it's the biggest African gathering you can find on the continent. So, there's a big focus on jazz, especially among the younger kids on primary school level already. Their parents listen to jazz, the grandparents listen to jazz, and so they are influenced into that. And so listening to some more modern music idioms like hip-hop music and, some R&B, so they tend to want to fuse, the genres and come up with something fresh and something new.
Well, and speaking of the fresh and the new, Mary Anne, if you don't mind saying, what is fresh and new about your album?
I would say, in terms of what Camillo says, that it's just me being me and being true to myself, and that there's songs that speak from the heart. It's hopefully, maybe there's stories that are similar, like a story about love or a broken heart. Those are common themes that go through songs, but mine is my own way of interpreting that, or it's a story about my life. It's something, universal themes that hopefully everybody can relate to. Often I think that there isn't really something such as something completely original. It's often taking things from different genres and putting them together in a unique way. And that's why I do think it's really great that the students are exposed to different genres, because then they can choose the things, or maybe they have an affinity to something specific, or maybe they choose the various things that inspire them and then come up with something eclectic.
How do you write about love without it sounding cliche?
That's a good question, because it's quite easy for it to sound cliched. But I think it's in terms of the technique of songwriting and the kinds of words that you use and the way you describe something. Like, I'll often try to think of a metaphor that's unusual. I think sometimes you need to just play it to somebody else and say, what do you think? Does this sound corny? And then just be open to feedback. To somebody that might say, I think you could change that a little bit, got to go back and work on it.
Yeah, if I could add to Mary Anne's comment there, and I think you should come and do a workshop at my college.
I'd love to.
It's important to bounce your ideas off critical people who are critical, and who are honest. People who, not family members who are your greatest fans and will say, oh, that sounds so beautiful, beautiful song. No. Get critical people who will tell you the truth about what they're hearing and what you're producing or coming up or writing or composing, and they'll get you to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, that didn't work. What I need to do to add to this and make it sound less cliche, maybe.
Yeah.
There's been tons of bands and groups over the years and the decades that have come up with that love theme. And so it's quite tricky, for it not to sound too cliche. And correctly said, find a metaphor that works, that's different. Find a different way of explaining love. Find a unique way of putting it out there.
Well, we only have a minute or two left. Let's get to the issue of love some more. So What do you love the most about music education?
I simply love it when I see the end product. I shed a tear when my students perform their original songs live, and I see the response of the audience. I mean, I see standing ovations, and I go, oh my word, this is what I love doing. Yeah.
Great.
I would say seeing people reach their potential, because I think, especially for me, I didn't think I could do it. I never imagined myself being able to sing, even though I wanted to. So somebody it's hidden dormant, and then they learn how to bring it out. And then, as you say, you get that response from people, and you realize they've got this amazing talent. It's there. It was there all along.
Thank you both. If you would like additional information about Camillo Lombard or Mary Anne Constable, please visit capemusicinstitute.co.za or maryannesong.com. If you have comments or suggestions about the show, Higher Education Today, please send an email to our viewer mailbox at highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. And thank you for watching. After Mary Anne's song, which is called Walls, on her album Where Oceans Meet the Sky, we will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. I'm Steven Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.
Lived in a house with a big backyard. When I was young, before life got hard, we played on the grass till the sun went down. We laid on our backs and watched the white clouds. Oh, my heart is drifting. Oh, the memories shifting. We climbed in the trees, hiding under the leaves. Imagined stories, created secrets that only we would keep. Oh, sometimes I laughed till I couldn't breathe. Oh, sometimes I cried myself to sleep inside your walls, under the stars, within your keep. And when I grew up, they broke your walls apart, created spaces for unknown faces on the blueprint of my heart. Oh, although you leave no trace behind. Oh, I'm walking in the hallways of my mind, inside your walls, under the stars, within your keep. Inside your walls, under the stars, I'm in your keep. Inside your walls, under the stars.